So this video is going to show you primarily how to get started on the shattered values portion using your handout where we've already done our value scale, and then we are moving right along to step number 5, and it's going to be 2-inch squares. But the first thing we need to do is basically trim our page down so that it is an 8 by 10 piece of paper, because right now it is 9 by 12. So this is my 12-inch side, so I'm just going to take 1 inch from either end. So I'm going to make a hash mark at the 1 and at the 11. I'm going to do that again towards the top here. A hash mark at the 1 and a hash mark at the 11, so that I can then very lightly connect those across. So I don't know if you can even see that. I will make them darker, but I want to get all of my lines drawn on there first. Because now the next thing I'm going to do is on the other end, the short end of the paper, it's 9 inches and I need to make it down to 8. So what I'm going to do is take a 1/2 inch off. So I'm going to make a mark at the 1/2 inch and a mark at the 8.5 on both ends of the paper. So the 1/2 inch and the 8.5. And then what I'm going to do is connect those hash marks across, but only within that 10-inch spot that I've already measured out. So it's going to start here on the line and go across to the next line. So that one you should be able to see because it is a lot darker. And then I will do the same thing up here. And then I will darken the shorter lines. And then I'm going to darken the shorter lines, but only that 10-inch portion of it. Because then that will give me an 8 by 10-inch sort of rectangle within my 9-inch by 12-inch paper. Because the rectangle, the 8 by 10 rectangle, is what we are going to be using for the project, because our first step is then to divide that into 2-inch squares. So a grid of 2-inch squares. Just like on the candy enlargement, if you guys have done that project. So I'm going to go ahead and put my ruler back down. I'm going to line the 0 spot over here up with the edge of the line that I have just drawn. I'm going to make a hash mark at the 2, the 4, the 6, and the 8. And I'm going to move my ruler down. Once again, line the 0 up with the line that I've drawn here. Make a hash mark at the 2, the 4, the 6, and the 8. And then I'm going to go ahead and connect those across. And these lines we actually can draw pretty dark because they are there to stay. It's not setting up a grid which will then be erased. We are setting up a grid that will stay and will actually become part of our shattered values project. And then we just have to do our 2-inch hash marks going the other direction now. So once again, make sure the 0 is on that line or hash mark at the 2, the 4, and the 6. Same thing on the other end. The 2, the 4, and the 6. And then connect those hash marks across within that space. Line the ruler up. Hold it down in the middle so that it doesn't shift on you. And draw that line across. So that would be the first part of creating our paper for our Shattered Values project. And that takes us up to step number 7. And then on step number 7, what we are doing is adding diagonal lines. So just add more different shapes in there and curled or curvy lines. We can even add a circle or a part of a circle. So what I'm going to do first is continue to use my ruler and just put some diagonal lines in there. Still staying within that shape that I have just made for the grid, the 8x10 rectangle. And then I'm going to go ahead and either find something round to trace, or just use a compass to make a circle or a curve, or you can freehand a curve if you are doing something that's not part of a circle. Sorry about that. It took me a minute to find a compass that was not too loose. And then I can just choose precisely where. Put the metal portion down. Expand the compass as far as I want to. And then I can just move it across, stopping it once it gets back to that next line. And I can do the same thing. I can do a big one. I can make it as big as I want or as small as I want. Put it maybe directly in the corner this time. I've expanded the compass as big as it'll go. And I could do something like that. I could add in more straight lines. I could add in more curved lines. I could even actually just find something circular and trace it at this point. Or I could use my compass to make a smaller circle. So for instance, let's say I want a smaller circle in here. Go over that a couple times to make it a little bit more visible. And then say that I want an even smaller circle over here. They are a little tricky to make with the compass. And I could still darken that if I needed to make it a little bit more visible. I could add more lines. I could add more curves, whatever I wanted to do at this point. I will say I like to have something drawn through pretty much every single square, because otherwise I'm shading that entire square. If I break that square into other shapes, then I will be using a smaller space for shading, which will make that part a bit easier. So what I am going to do is just add in sort of a curved freehand line that goes around and through some of the shapes that don't have anything yet. So you could do something like that. And then if I wanted to put a little more information or detail here, I could use straight lines, I could use jagged lines, I could use a circle again, I could use another free-handed curve. I think what I'm going to do is put my compass actually off of the page. And maybe add 2 here that are smaller, and then that way they are concentric. So then that would be an example of what your paper could look like at this particular stage. I will zoom in a little bit so that we can see that a little bit better. Straighten up my camera a bit. So once again, I'll just kind of take you throughout the whole thing. It's all drawn and it is ready to go ahead and start the shading step now. And on most of the shading step, what you're going to be doing is very similar to what we've already done on your value scale. because basically what you're going to be doing is creating a value scale in each of these shapes going in any direction. So as you can see on the example, which is printed for you, this is sort of where you are headed. So your value scales can go up, they can go down, they can go across, they can go diagonal, but basically every single line that you have drawn on your 9x12 paper is going to become its own shape. So this would have a value scale in it. This would have a separate value scale. This would have another one and another one and another one, so on and so forth. And for this project, you can use just one regular pencil and have all of your shading be black and white. You can use colored pencils, and you can use a variety of colored pencils, or you can choose to do something that is a bit more monochromatic, to where you use different tints and shades, or lighter and darker versions of one color. Like if I wanted to do all green, I could, and it would just be darker and lighter green. Or if I wanted to use a couple of different colors, like an analogous color scheme, I could do colors that are side by side on the color wheel, which would be like green, blue, teal, purple, those kinds of colors. I could do a mixture of graphite and colored pencil. It's completely up to you. But your first step, as it says on Google Classrooms, is to make sure that you have at least 5 value scales on this. So you need to complete this value scale first so that you get the idea and the method and the technique. And then on each one of these, you will be doing a graduated value scale, which just gradually gets lighter as it moves across. So it would be something kind of like this. And this is just a very quick example. And then as I move across that space, I'm going to get lighter and lighter by pressing down less and less. And then the next thing I would do would be to go back the opposite direction, go all the way up to those edges and smooth things out. Remember that this is going to be a process which is done in layers, because these first 2 layers are not going to be perfect. There's still going to be jagged edges. There's still going to be unwanted pencil lines. So you do want to go over and over as many times as each shape dictates, so that you can get a nice smooth value transition in there from dark to light. Because that is the most important part of this project, is really working on making your value transitions as smooth as you can and making sure that you have a nice full range of values in there. So you should have basically everything from that darkest dark all the way up to a much, much lighter value. So I'm just going to go ahead and add another layer in here. And if you have drawing pencils, which are pencils that are specifically for shading, you can absolutely use those for this project, because certain pencils that are higher on the B scale will make a softer and darker mark. So you can basically push your value scale and your value range even further by using those pencils. It is not required for this project, but it definitely can help if you have access to those. And the technique would be exactly the same with a colored pencil. It just would be that your value scale would be full color instead of being black and white. And once again, you can mix and match colors. You can use pencil on some and colored pencil on others. It is completely up to you at this point. The main thing is, once again, practicing making smooth value transitions as you move from dark to light in any direction you choose.